Usually when you hear about like a routine police stop or maybe just a standard digital search, there is a very predictable rhythm to the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, the scope is always inherently limited by whatever that initial suspicion was.
Exactly. I mean, you pull someone over for a broken taillight, you write the ticket, and everybody just goes on their way.
Or in the digital realm, you seize a suspect's laptop looking for tax fraud, you find the Cook spreadsheets, and you close the file.
Yeah, but imagine you pull that car over for the broken taillight, you walk up, ask for the license and registration, standard procedure.
Mm-hmm.
But the driver is nervous, like maybe a little too nervous.
Right, the intuition kicks in.
Exactly. So your intuition kicks in and you ask to pop the trunk. And you lift the lid expecting maybe, I don't know, some stolen hubcaps or contraband.
Sure.
But instead, sitting there, wedged between the spare tire and a tangled set of jumper cables wrapped in this old moving blanket, is the Mona Lisa.
I mean, that is exactly the level of systemic shock we're examining today.
It really is.
Stumbling into a literal geopolitical earthquake simply by tripping over a crack in the sidewalk.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a real-life espionage thriller. And honestly, even calling it a thriller feels kind of inadequate for what we're about to explore.
Yeah, it really does. The convergence of domains here is just staggering.
It is. We're looking at this sprawling intelligence case in Taiwan, and we're relying on a really dense stack of source materials.
Right. We've got indictments, digital forensics, investigative summaries, and quite a few media reports, too.
Exactly. And we're going to map out how this seemingly straightforward investigation into a military spy just completely unraveled.
And in doing so, it pulled back the curtain on a plot to steal the world's most advanced microchip technology.
Right. So our mission today for you listening is to unpack that exact convergence.
We're looking at an operation that seamlessly bridges, traditional military espionage, grassroots cultural infiltration, and high-stakes corporate data theft.
All functioning under one single umbrella. We want to show you how religious festivals, military defense plans, and billion-dollar semiconductor secrets all got completely tangled up.
But before we get into the weeds here, we really need to talk about the nature of our sources today.
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, the documents we have are a wild mix.
They are, because on one hand, we have hard, undeniable evidence, right?
Right. Digital footprints, recovered data, the specific individuals indicted,
and the actual national security laws that were applied to their cases.
But on the other hand, the media commentary surrounding this case is just filled with really heavy speculation.
Oh, absolutely. You've got theories about assassinations, fifth-column sleeper cells, and even divine retribution.
Divine retribution, yeah. So we need to act as a filter for you today.
Exactly. We will walk you through the hard evidence and analyze the espionage tactics and the legal frameworks objectively.
And when we get to the wilder media theories and the public speculation later on, we will make sure to let you know.
Right. We aren't saying those theories are true. And we're definitely not endorsing the political viewpoints of the commentators proposing them.
Not at all. Our goal is just to dissect the mechanics of the case, explain why people believe these narratives, and convey the ideas from the original sources without taking a side.
Perfect.
So let's start with the inciting incident. The broken taillight that led to the Mona Lisa.
Right, going back to that investigative timeline.
Yeah. So authorities were tracking this military espionage suspect, a guy named Ding Xiaohu.
And they secure his devices, right?
Yeah.
His phone, his computer, his communication records.
Yep. And their objective is super clear. They are looking for military contacts, troop movements, radar deployments, that sort of thing.
Because he's a military spy.
Exactly. But while they are sifting through this massive digital haystack looking for military needles, they accidentally discover a completely different kind of anomaly.
They find this direct line of communication to a man named Chen Zijin.
And here's the kicker. Chen had absolutely nothing to do with the military.
Nothing at all. He was a civilian. Specifically, he was a former deputy manager at TSMC.
Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
Right.
For anyone who only casually follows the tech sector, let's just establish the stakes here. TSMC is basically the undisputed heavyweight champion of the semiconductor world.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't just make chips. They make the most advanced chips on the planet.
The silicon brains that run our smartphones, our AI servers, our advanced weapons systems.
So finding a direct link between a military spy and a manager at TSMC.
It's like finding a tunnel connecting a bank vault to a foreign embassy.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the investigators quickly realize this former deputy manager, Chen, wasn't just like chatting with Ding.
No, he was actively stealing highly sensitive corporate data.
And the gravity of that discovery really altered the entire trajectory of the investigation.
Oh, I bet.
The breakdown reveals that Chen had illegally reproduced 21 specific items.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure, go for it.
Because to a layperson, 21 items sounds, honestly, almost laughably small.
Right.
I mean, I have hundreds of PDFs on my desktop right now. In the context of a company worth hundreds of billions of dollars, 21 files sounds like a drop in the bucket.
It does sound small.
So why is this a geopolitical earthquake?
Because in the realm of advanced semiconductors, an item isn't just some generic text document.
Okay.
An item could be the precise chemical formulation for a photoresist layer, or the highly specific thermal calibration parameters for an extreme ultraviolet lithography machine.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about the actual secret sauce.
Exactly. These are manufacturing processes that require billions of dollars in capital investment.
Right.
And literally a decade of trial and error research to perfect.
Yeah.
You are talking about the absolute crown jewels of the modern digital economy.
The intellectual property that gives this one single company a massive strategic advantage on a global scale. So the question immediately becomes, how does a military spy, a guy whose day job is ostensibly monitoring troop deployments and armored vehicle maintenance schedules, how does he end up holding the blueprints for the world's most advanced microchips?
Yeah, what is the strategic overlap there?
Exactly.
Well, the overlap is found in this highly ambitious strategy that the operatives referred to as the Blue Ocean Plan.
The Blue Ocean Plan. I mean, it sounds like a generic corporate retreat initiative.
It really does. But Ding, the military operative, and Chen, the former TSMC manager, they weren't just passively collecting documents.
Right, they weren't just dumping files onto a secure server for a handler.
No, they had a joint venture in mind. The strategy was actually to establish a semiconductor material analysis company over in China.
And this is the part of the source material that made me stop and reread it like 3 times.
It's wild.
The strategy wasn't just to steal the blueprints, email them across the strait, and call it a day.
Not at all. The theft of those 21 items was really just phase 1.
Right.
That material analysis company they were setting up, it was designed to be a landing pad for a much larger extraction.
They actively planned to poach engineers from across different TSMC production lines.
Yeah, let's really pause on that because the analogy here is crucial.
Please.
They didn't just want the recipe for the secret sauce. They wanted to kidnap the head chef, the sous chefs, the line cooks.
And the guy who knows exactly how to fix the oven when the thermostat lies.
Exactly. They wanted the entire kitchen staff.
Which really highlights a fundamental reality of high-tech manufacturing that I think a lot of people just deeply misunderstand.
Oh, totally. Even people within the tech sector sometimes get this wrong.
Right, because replicating an advanced microchip is not like photocopying a document.
Or like reverse engineering an engine block where you can just measure the parts and cast a mold.
Right. You can't simply look at the blueprints, even all 21 highly classified items of them, and suddenly start printing cutting-edge semiconductors.
Because knowing the dimensions of the chip doesn't actually tell you how to manipulate silicon atoms at a sub-nanometer level.
It's not just about the what, it's entirely about the how.
And that how is something we call tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge, okay.
Yeah. It is the deeply ingrained, often completely unwritten expertise embedded within the human supply chain.
Right, the stuff you can't just put in a PDF.
Exactly. It requires process engineers who know how a specific machine vibrates on a Tuesday.
Wow.
Or material scientists who understand the microscopic impurities in a specific batch of silicon.
Or the quality control experts who can just look at a failure rate and intuitively know which pipe in a multi-billion-dollar clean room is leaking.
Right, leaking a microscopic amount of gas. So by aiming to poach engineers from various distinct production lines, the Blue Ocean Plan was attempting to do something massive.
They were trying to systematically transplant the entire organic ecosystem of TSMC's manufacturing capability.
Stealing the human capital to make the stolen intellectual property actually functional.
It is breathtakingly audacious. I mean, stealing a secret formula is espionage. Stealing an entire factory's collective brain trust is basically trying to clone an industry.
It really is. But, and this is the crucial turning point in this initial phase of the narrative, they didn't pull it off.
Right. The digital taillight gave them away.
Exactly. The digital footprints were their undoing. Through rigorous forensic analysis of Ding's seized devices and communication logs, investigators tracked the flow back to Chen.
And the report confirms that all 21 items of sensitive data were successfully recovered before they could be fully utilized.
Which is a huge relief. And the consequences are severe. Prosecutors are currently seeking a 7-year sentence for Chen Zijian.
But frankly, throwing Chen in prison doesn't solve the bigger nightmare here.
No, it doesn't.
For TSMC or for global tech security, because Chen didn't hack into a mainframe from a basement in a foreign country. He just used the tools he was given.
Right, we have to ask how he took this data.
Exactly. How does a deputy manager just walk out of one of the most technologically advanced, highly secure companies on Earth with the digital equivalent of a nuclear submarine schematic?
Well, this brings us to a massive systemic vulnerability that this case really exposed.
Yeah, the source material spends a significant amount of time highlighting this paradox of corporate security.
It really does. It points to a very specific and highly counterintuitive risk factor that upends how most of us view cybersecurity.
Right, because when you or I imagine a corporate data breach, Hollywood has basically trained us to picture a low-level employee.
Like a disgruntled intern.
Yeah, or a janitor paid off by a rival plugging a USB thumb drive into an unattended terminal in the dead of night, watching a progress bar slowly fill up.
And sneaking out past a sleeping security guard.
Exactly. But companies like TSMC have incredibly robust defenses against exactly that kind of brute force extraction.
Oh, absolutely. Physical USB ports are routinely disabled or glued shut.
Massive data downloads trigger instant algorithmic alarms.
Physical access to sensitive server rooms is restricted by multi-factor biometric authentication.
So the true vulnerability is not the low-level employee attempting to bypass the perimeter.
No, the vulnerability is the high-level manager who is already inside the vault.
The paradox of access. You build the most secure digital fortress in the world. You have armed guards, encrypted servers, air-gapped networks.
But the architect of the fortress, or the general managing it, inherently holds the master keys to every single room.
Because to do their jobs effectively, high-level managers overseeing complex operations like semiconductor manufacturing, they require broad cross-departmental access.
Right. A deputy manager needs to see how the materials procurement division is interacting with the fabrication division.
Which means they need visibility into the highly sensitive data of both.
Exactly. They are granted sweeping authorization because restricting them would just grind the company's operations to a halt.
So they become a single point of failure.
Yes, they do.
And the source material outlines the exact leak vectors Chen used. And I read this, and I honestly almost laughed out loud at how mundane it was.
It really is shocking.
We aren't talking about sophisticated zero-day exploits or encrypted dark web data drop.
No. The leaks occurred through paper notebooks, mobile phone notes, and private cloud synchronization.
It is the absolute banality of modern espionage.
The greatest threat to a multi-billion-dollar trade secret is literally an auto-sync feature on a consumer smartphone.
I have to put this in perspective for you listening because this is wild.
That's crazy.
Think about the friction you experience just trying to get on an airplane. You have to take off your shoes, empty your pockets, throw away a perfectly good bottle of water, all for security.
Right.
Meanwhile, at the apex of global technological manufacturing, a manager is essentially walking out the front door with civilization-altering blueprints because he jotted them down in the Apple Notes app on his personal iPhone.
And it automatically synced to his iCloud over a cellular network.
How is that even possible? Like, why is it so incredibly hard to secure this kind of data, especially right before an employee resigns?
Well, it's difficult because of the complete blurring of lines between personal and professional digital environments.
Oh, okay.
And that's compounded by this concept of a digital shadow.
Wait, the digital shadow?
Yeah. Let's look at the resignation period. When a high-level manager like Chen decides to leave or is actively recruited by a hostile entity, they often maintain weeks or even months of continued, fully authorized access.
While they transition their duties, right?
Exactly. So their digital shadow, the trail of data they interact with every single day, remains active and completely legitimate.
Ah, and auditing that digital shadow retrospectively must be a logistical nightmare.
Oh, it's near impossible. If the system logs show that Manager Chen opened a highly classified lithography blueprint on a Tuesday afternoon, that event does not trigger a security alarm.
Because opening that blueprint is quite literally his job description.
Exactly. The security system, no matter how advanced, cannot discern the intent behind the access.
It can't tell the difference between Chen opening the file to review a production metric for a legitimate quarterly report.
and Chen opening the file to meticulously copy the specifications onto a physical pad of paper sitting on his desk.
Or using his personal smartphone to just snap a photo of the glowing computer screen.
The system only knows he had the right password.
Right.
The core issue identified here is an outdated paradigm regarding access management.
Which relies heavily on perimeter defense, right? Keeping the bad actors out of the network.
Yes, but when the bad actor is already inside, possesses the highest level of clearance, and is literally tasked with handling the very data you are trying to protect, traditional defenses are entirely blind.
Right. When a manager utilizes a personal device's cloud sync, a feature engineered entirely for user convenience, it completely bypasses the corporate network's data loss prevention tools.
The data simply leaves the controlled environment through a side door that the company itself left unlocked for the sake of operational efficiency.
It is a terrifying management loophole. I mean, convenience and the necessity of doing business basically override the security protocols designed to protect the business.
It's the perfect corporate blind spot.
Which leads us to the mastermind who recognized these exact vulnerabilities across multiple sectors and exploited them flawlessly.
Right. Ding Xiaohu.
Exactly. We've looked at the corporate side with Chen, but let's pivot to the architect of this entire operation. The military spy whose phone started this entire cascade.
Let's do it.
Who exactly is this guy, and how did he manage to operate so effectively in the shadows?
Well, based on the investigative documents, Ding Xiaohu presents a very specific and highly cultivated profile.
Okay.
He is a Hong Kong-born citizen of mainland China.
Right.
And he possesses an extensive background in commerce, specifically boasting deep ties to the Chinese Federation of Industry and Commerce, as well as connections to local people's congresses.
So on paper, he presents as a completely legitimate, highly connected businessman.
Extremely legitimate. He has the exact credentials, the business cards, and the vocabulary of someone you would actively want to network with.
Especially if you were a Taiwanese local looking for cross-strait investment or commerce opportunities.
Exactly. He is wearing the perfect camouflage for a capitalist society.
That outward-facing persona was impeccably maintained.
But the indictment alleges that his true mandate was entirely different.
Right.
Since 2018, his actions were allegedly directed by a very specific entity, the Central Military Commission Political Work Department Liaison Bureau.
Wow. And his core mission was to travel to Taiwan and actively develop a robust, self-sustaining intelligence organization from the ground up.
And this is where we really get into his methodology, because it is a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
It really is. Ding didn't just fly to Taipei and start cold calling military bases.
Or hanging out in bars near army barracks offering cash for secrets.
No, he needed a cover. He needed a way to build a network organically.
A way to bypass the natural suspicion that military personnel have toward mainland businessmen.
And his primary tool for this, religion.
Specifically, cross-strait religious exchanges centered around Mazu temple culture.
Which is just, this is the part that fascinates me.
So calculated.
Using a Mazu temple exchange for espionage, it's basically like using a massive neighborhood block party or a church picnic to recruit sleeper agents.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Because if a stranger approaches you at a bar and starts asking pointed questions about your military base's deployment schedule, your guard goes up immediately.
You report them.
Exactly. But if you meet someone at a religious festival, an event entirely centered around community, shared heritage, faith, and mutual respect, your psychological defenses are fundamentally lowered.
Let's look at the plumbing of this pipeline, because the sociology here is really critical.
Break it down.
The source documents explicitly note that the religion itself, the actual theology of Mazu, wasn't the target.
Right.
Religion was merely the medium. It was the fertile soil in which trust could be rapidly cultivated.
Because Mazu is a deeply revered sea goddess, right?
Yes. Her worship is incredibly popular and deeply ingrained in both Taiwan and the coastal regions of mainland China.
And her veneration involves these massive festivals, multi-day pilgrimages, and sprawling cultural exchanges.
Right. Events that frequently bring thousands of people together across the strait to celebrate shared heritage. So when individuals gather for these religious exchanges, they are engaging in a shared vulnerability.
They are participating in rituals that signify in-group membership.
Exactly. It exploits the very best parts of human nature.
We want to connect with people who share our beliefs. We want to feel part of a larger supportive community.
We just assume that someone praying next to us shares our moral baseline.
And Ding weaponized that fundamental human desire for connection.
He did. By deeply integrating himself into these Mazu cultural exchanges, he established an interpersonal network built on the assumption of mutual respect.
He wasn't a foreign spy asking for state secrets. He was a fellow believer.
He was a community leader, a generous businessman funding festival activities, a pillar of the shared tradition.
He manufactured a baseline of implicit trust.
And once that trust was established, he could begin the real methodical work.
Identifying and slowly grooming his true targets.
Exactly. He's looking for active and retired military personnel who also happen to participate in these cultural networks.
And it's a slow burn, right?
Very slow.
You meet a guy at a temple, you share a meal, you talk about your kids, your aging parents, the struggles of daily life.
Months pass.
Maybe he helps you out with a small loan when your car breaks down.
Or maybe he introduces you to a business contact.
It's grooming, pure and simple, exactly like a predator operates.
And the sources show that this patient, slow-burn approach was devastatingly effective.
So let's follow the pipeline ding, built straight from the temple courtyard right into the military barracks.
The penetration he achieved was deep, systemic, and multifaceted.
Yeah.
The source documents reveal that Ding's organization successfully infiltrated several critical branches of the Taiwanese armed forces.
They didn't just compromise a single unit.
No. We are talking about the Army's armored forces, the Air Force's Air Defense and Missile Command, and various highly sensitive Army testing units.
They cast a massive net across the most vital defensive structures of the island.
And they were successful in absorbing personnel across multiple operational ranks.
Majors, lieutenants, and sergeants.
And the specific distribution of those ranks is tactically significant.
Why is that?
Well, they needed the majors and lieutenants, the commissioned officers, because they have access to high-level strategic planning, troop deployments, and overall combat doctrine.
Makes sense.
But they equally needed the non-commissioned officers, the sergeants.
Right, because the sergeants are the ones who handle the day-to-day logistics.
Exactly. They manage the duty rosters, they have literal hands-on access to the physical equipment, and they know the immediate readiness state of a unit.
The data leaked by this combination of individuals was catastrophic.
Active combat deployments, granular training plans, and specific classified military equipment data.
Okay, I want to stop right here and highlight a detail in the source material that absolutely floored me.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
Because we are talking about high treason here.
Right.
We are talking about active duty soldiers actively handing over the combat deployments and training schedules of their own units.
Information that directly, immediately jeopardizes the lives of their fellow soldiers.
And the security of millions of civilians. And when you look at the financial compensation they received for this betrayal,
it is shockingly, almost insultingly low.
It really is.
The figures cited in the indictment provide a stark reality check on the economics of espionage.
The 6 implicated soldiers received a combined total payout ranging between 80,000 and 500,000 new Taiwan dollars.
Right.
Let me translate that for you, the listener, to really put the absurdity of this into perspective. That is a total payout ranging from roughly 2,500 US dollars to maybe 15,000 US dollars.
Spread among 6 people.
They sold out their country. They risked a lifetime in a military prison for the price of a used Honda Civic.
It's wild.
How does that make any logical, rational sense?
Well, it makes sense because it completely subverts our cinematic expectations of how human intelligence gathering actually works.
Right.
We are conditioned to expect James Bond scenarios.
Suitcases full of unmarked, non-sequential bills.
Secret offshore bank accounts in the Caymans with millions of dollars. But the reality of human intelligence is often remarkably cheap.
It doesn't rely on pure cartoonish greed. It preys on immediate, crushing human vulnerabilities.
Yes. You're talking about everyday pressures, things like debt.
Debt.
Debt is perhaps the most common lever. Imagine a sergeant who's drowning in high-interest loans, perhaps from a gambling problem or medical bills.
They are desperate, facing ruin.
To that person, a quick, untraceable payment of 50,000 NTD isn't just money, it's a lifeline.
It provides immediate relief from an overwhelming psychological burden.
Exactly. But beyond financial debt, espionage relies heavily on grievance and ego.
Grievance and ego. Okay, explain that.
Consider a passed-over major who feels deeply unappreciated by his superiors. Someone who believes he is smarter than the generals giving him orders.
Oh, I see.
Leaking information becomes a way to exert a secret sense of power. It's a way to get back at the institution that slighted him.
And Ding, the handler, would have identified exactly which lever to pull during those long, patient, trust-building sessions that started back at the temple.
Precisely. He figures out who needs money, who needs a friend, and who needs their ego stroked.
He wasn't buying their absolute loyalty with massive wealth. He was renting their access by exploiting their immediate mundane pressures.
The price of treason is rarely $1 million. It's usually just enough to cover a bad bet or to make a marginalized person feel critically important for a fleeting moment.
That is incredibly bleak. It demystifies the spy game in the most depressing way possible.
It really does.
But the source material outlines something even darker than the stolen deployment data. The espionage ring wasn't merely a vacuum cleaner extracting information. They were actively injecting something highly toxic back into the military infrastructure.
This is a crucial, terrifying detail from the investigative summary. The organization demanded that the soldiers they recruited go beyond passive theft.
They were ordered to actively spread a specific defeatist narrative within their respective units.
The exact phrase quoted in the source is chilling.
Yeah. They were instructed to tell their fellow soldiers during casual conversations in the mess hall or during training exercises, if war breaks out, there's no need to resist.
Which elevates the entire operation from simple intelligence gathering to active psychological warfare.
They are attempting to dismantle the military's operational morale from the inside out.
It's an insidious form of psyops.
Think about it. If you can convince an entire armored division that fighting is a lost cause, that resistance is futile and will only result in meaningless death.
You don't even need to steal their deployment strategy. You've already neutralized the threat.
The tanks won't roll. You've won the battle before the first shot is even fired.
It turns the corrupted soldiers into active vectors for an ideological contagion.
It demonstrates that the intelligence network's goals were not purely informational, they were profoundly operational.
They were laying the psychological groundwork for a total collapse of the military's will to fight.
Which brings us to the aftermath.
Right.
We've tracked Ding Xiaohu from his corporate cover through the cultural pipeline of the temples, deep into the military bases, and into the proprietary data servers of TSMC.
He built a masterpiece of an intelligence network.
But what actually happened to the architect of this massive operation when the authorities finally closed in?
Well, this is the juncture where the factual record and intense public speculation violently collide.
Right.
According to the official timeline presented by the authorities, the three core figures of this espionage ring all died.
All three?
Yes. That includes Ding Xiaohu himself, his primary Taiwanese assistant, Zhang Zhuwei, and the man who handled the financial flows and payouts, a Taiwanese businessman named He Shengyang.
And to be clear, they didn't die of old age over the course of decades.
No.
The source explicitly states they all died within a span of roughly a year.
The official sequence of events states that Ding Xiaohu reportedly fell severely ill while in custody.
Okay.
And he died after being granted medical parole to receive hospital treatment.
Right.
Zhang Zhao Jinjiang also reportedly died of sudden illnesses shortly after the investigation began to close the net around them.
Okay, stop right there.
Yeah.
You have the mastermind, his right-hand logistical man, and the guy holding the purse strings, all dying of sudden, fatal illnesses within months of each other, right as their entire network is exposed and the prosecutors are preparing their cases.
It's a lot to process.
You can imagine the absolute firestorm this set off in the media and the public consciousness.
Oh, the source material extensively documents the resulting media frenzy. Various political commentators, talk shows, and news programs immediately began floating wild, dramatic theories.
And the most prominent and widely circulated theory was the idea of silencing.
Yes, the narrative suggests that they were systematically assassinated by their own handlers to prevent them from testifying, revealing higher-level contacts, or detailing further operational methods.
The sources also mentioned theories about fifth column activity.
Right. The implication is that there are still deep cover operatives embedded in society who are actively cleaning up loose ends and executing these men.
And then, leaning back into the religious angle that Ding exploited so effectively, some commentators even suggested divine retribution.
Yes.
The idea that this was the Mazu goddess literally striking them down for using her sacred temples to commit treason.
Which is, well, this is a critical moment for us to pause and practice rigorous media literacy.
Right. We must cleanly separate the circumstantial coincidence from verified facts.
Exactly. Let's ground this completely.
So what do the actual verifiable investigative authorities state happened?
The official investigative bodies, the prosecutors and the medical examiners, have stated unequivocally that these were distinct, naturally occurring medical events.
They happened at different times and in different locations.
Yes. There are official hospital death certificates for all three individuals.
Okay.
Furthermore, in Ding's specific case, while he was on medical parole receiving treatment at the hospital, he was under constant 24-hour police guard.
So we aren't talking about a team of highly trained assassins rappelling down the side of a hospital and sneaking a poison dart into the ICU.
No. There's absolutely zero public, verified evidence presented in any of the source material to support the theory of assassination, poisoning, or silencing.
The authorities maintain firmly that it was a string of fatal natural illnesses.
Yes.
I understand the official stance. I really do.
Good.
But I have to admit, as someone reading this, my brain is screaming at me right now.
Sure.
3 key guys, 1 year, all dead right before trial. It feels like a plot point from a cheap airport spy novel that an editor would reject for being too unbelievable.
Right. That reaction is entirely human, and it is a perfect textbook example of cognitive bias.
Cognitive bias.
Specifically, narrative fallacy and pattern-seeking behavior. The human brain is an evolutionary pattern recognition machine.
Right, we want things to make sense.
We are hardwired to desperately want to connect random dots to form a cohesive, thrilling, and understandable narrative.
Okay.
So when we are faced with a string of highly improbable but entirely mundane events, like 3 related individuals falling fatally ill by sheer coincidence, our brains instinctively reject the chaotic nature of reality.
We search for a hidden hand. We want a mastermind.
We want a conspiracy and a silencing order.
Because a conspiracy implies order.
Exactly.
It implies that someone, somewhere, is in control of the situation.
Right.
Whereas 3 random fatal illnesses just highlight the unpredictable, terrifying fragility of life.
We prefer a scary story that makes sense over a random tragedy that reminds us of our own mortality.
Precisely. However, even if we accept the official mundane record that there was absolutely no assassination, the source material points out that the concept of being silenced or abandoned is deeply ingrained in the psychology of espionage.
It is.
To make sense of the current anxieties surrounding this case, the commentators in the source draw heavily on historical precedents.
They attempt to contextualize the fear by pointing to past cases where intelligence agencies definitively and ruthlessly severed ties with their exposed operatives.
And the most prominent example they pull up is the case of Larry Wu-Tai Chin, also known as Jin Wu-Dai.
Right. Larry Wu-Tai Chin represents the ultimate cautionary tale in intelligence circles.
He was a translator and analyst for the CIA, right?
Yes, and for several decades, he secretly provided highly classified American intelligence to the Chinese government.
Wow.
When he was finally exposed and arrested by the FBI in the mid-1980s, he expected his handlers to protect him.
Like maybe arrange a spy swap or something?
Exactly. Instead, his entire support network evaporated instantly.
The source explicitly notes that the Chinese government officially and loudly disavowed him.
They publicly denied having any relationship with him whatsoever. They stated he was not their agent.
He was completely and utterly abandoned.
Facing a lengthy prison sentence, the destruction of his legacy, and realizing that the government he had served at immense personal risk for years had cut him loose without a second thought.
He ultimately died by suicide in his prison cell before sentencing.
Yes. And the commentators in our source used this historical case to illustrate a brutal, fundamental rule of the intelligence world.
Which is?
An operative is a valued asset only as long as they are useful and undetected.
The exact millisecond they are exposed, they transform into a radioactive liability to be jettisoned.
The ultimate burn notice.
Right. The source also mentions a more recent case from 2021, a man named Ji Shizhang.
Right, which showed a very similar pattern.
A businessman developing military contacts using commercial fronts, demonstrating that this methodology of using business and culture as cover is a recurring playbook.
So the media is taking these historical analogies, these known burn notices, and using them to try and force the Ding Zhaohu narrative into a recognizable box.
They are using history to map the present.
Exactly. But while the historical analogies regarding abandoned spies are fascinating, they remain analogies.
Right.
The source material eventually pivots away from the public speculation surrounding the deaths and points to a much more concrete, verifiable, and systemic reason why we are suddenly hearing about so many complex espionage cases like this one breaking into the news cycle.
Because it genuinely feels like every other week there is a new headline about a spy ring being busted.
It does.
And the easy gut reaction assumption is that there must be a sudden, massive influx of spies pouring into the country, like an unprecedented wave of infiltration.
But the reality is far more bureaucratic.
Okay.
The surge in these high-profile cases is primarily the result of a significant legal paradigm shift.
The source material highlights a major structural overhaul of national security laws that occurred around 2022.
Right.
Let's unpack this paradigm shift, because this legal change seems to be the linchpin of the entire modern espionage landscape we are discussing today.
It really is.
What exactly changed in 2022 that brought all these cases to light?
To understand the shift, we have to look at the baseline. Previously, if someone like our TSMC manager, Chen Zijian, stole blueprints for a new microchip, it was primarily treated by the justice system as a corporate crime.
Right. It was categorized as the theft of trade secrets.
It was serious, it carried penalties, but it was fundamentally viewed through the lens of economic and corporate law.
Under the old laws, the victim was the company. TSMC lost money. TSMC lost its competitive edge, so TSMC pressed charges.
He was treated essentially like stealing the secret recipe for a highly profitable soft drink.
But the 2022 legal revisions fundamentally redefined the geopolitical playing field.
They did. The legislative changes legally recognized that certain technologies, specifically designated as core critical technologies like advanced semiconductors, are so vital to the very survival and functioning of the state that stealing them can no longer be categorized merely as corporate theft.
So what does this actually mean for someone caught stealing a hard drive?
It means these specific technologies were reclassified under the umbrella of national security.
Wow.
Stealing the manufacturing process for a sub-nanometer chip is now legally, structurally equivalent to stealing the blueprints for a next-generation fighter jet.
Or a nuclear reactor, or a missile defense system.
Exactly.
The law has finally caught up to the terrifying reality of the 21st century.
Yes, a semiconductor fabrication plant is just as critical to the national defense of Taiwan as a heavily fortified military base.
If an adversary can replicate your chips, they can outpace your economy and neutralize your advanced weapons.
That is a massive fundamental shift in how a nation views its own vulnerability.
And with that severe reclassification came drastically increased consequences.
Yes. The source notes that the criminal liability for developing organizations for hostile foreign forces and for committing economic espionage involving these newly defined core technologies was heavily amplified.
We are talking about the introduction of significantly longer mandatory prison sentences.
And astronomically steeper financial fines that can ruin a family for generations.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most fascinating psychological element of this entire deep dive.
Yeah, this part is really interesting.
We've talked about the laws punishing the spies, but the source explores how these new, heavy-handed laws practically dismantle spy rings from the inside out.
Utilizing a concept you absolutely love.
Game theory.
Game theory, yes. The new legal framework didn't just increase the punishment, it introduced a crucial, highly disruptive mechanism designed to break trust.
Okay, how does it do that?
The law now explicitly states that if an individual involved in one of these espionage networks surrenders voluntarily, or if they confess during investigation and provide evidence that directly leads to the capture of their co-conspirators or their handlers,
they become eligible for a significantly reduced sentence or potentially even full immunity.
Yes. It is the absolute classic prisoner's dilemma written into national security law.
In game theory, the prisoner's dilemma mathematically demonstrates why two completely rational individuals might choose not to cooperate with each other, even if it appears that cooperation is in their mutual best interests.
Right. And in the context of a clandestine espionage ring, blind trust is the only glue holding the fragile network together once the authorities start closing in.
Let's map this out practically for the listener so they can really feel the tension.
Okay, set the scene.
Imagine you are one of those Army sergeants. You took $50,000 to hand over a training schedule.
You thought you were safe.
Exactly. But today, you hear through the grapevine that another member of your Mazu Temple network, a lieutenant you met at a festival, has been brought in for questioning.
Under the old legal framework, maybe you both stay quiet.
You hold the line, hope the digital evidence is weak, and ride out the investigation together.
Because under the old laws, the penalty for getting caught might have been manageable. A few years, a fine.
And crucially, there was no structural legal incentive to talk. Staying silent was the logical bet.
But under the new laws, the paradigm is flipped.
The penalty for espionage is now financially ruinous and involves a massive chunk of your life behind bars. treason charges.
And, sitting in your barracks, the lieutenant in the interrogation room right now is being offered a golden deal.
Give us the rest of the network, give us the handler, and you walk away with a fraction of the sentence.
Your internal risk calculus changes in an instant. You cannot trust the lieutenant's loyalty.
You have to assume, as a rational actor, that he is going to take the deal to save himself.
And if he talks first, he gets the leniency, and you get the maximum amplified sentence.
Therefore, your only rational, self-preserving move is to race him to the prosecutor's office and confess everything Bethany does.
It creates an unstoppable domino effect.
Once one single node in the network is compromised, like, say, a military spy named Ding Xiaohu getting his phone searched for a broken taillight equivalent,
the risk of every other member being exposed skyrockets exponentially. The trust evaporates instantly.
The structure of the law weaponizes human self-preservation against the integrity of the intelligence network.
Which brings us beautifully full circle back to the silencing theories we analyzed earlier.
Right. Even if Ding Xiaohu, his assistant, and his financier died of completely natural, verified medical causes, which the authorities firmly state they did,
this new legal structure creates an overwhelming structural incentive for an intelligence agency to rapidly cut ties with or burn exposed networks.
From the perspective of the handler's superiors back at the Central Bureau, the exact moment Ding's phone was seized, he transformed into a radioactive liability.
Because of the leniency provisions in the new laws, the Central Bureau has to assume that everyone in Ding's network is currently calculating whether to defect and testify.
The intelligence agency simply cannot afford a chain reaction of confessions.
A sergeant confesses and gives up Ding. Ding confesses and gives up his superiors.
The Central Bureau cannot allow that trail to lead back to higher-level operational methods or other still active networks hidden across the island.
So, whether through explicit orders to cease all contact, deleting secure communication channels, or simply denying any knowledge of their existence, like in the Larry Wu Tai-Chin case,
the network is systematically and ruthlessly abandoned.
it fundamentally alters the risk-reward equation for anyone considering selling secrets in the future.
You aren't just risking capture by the authorities, you are risking being completely isolated, disavowed, and abandoned by the very organization you compromised your life to serve.
Right at the exact moment you are facing maximum legal jeopardy.
It is a brutal, cold reality check. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, peeling back the layers of this incredible story.
We really have.
We started with a routine search of a military suspect's phone, the digital broken taillight, and we ended up popping the trunk on a staggering conspiracy that crossed every boundary of society.
We've seen how a single operation utilized the deeply rooted, beautiful traditions of Mazu temple festivals to build a pipeline of trust.
We followed that pipeline as trust was weaponized to penetrate the armored forces and missile commands of the military,
Preying on the mundane financial pressures and psychological grievances of the soldiers rather than utilizing millions of dollars.
We tracked the sheer ambition of the network as it reached into the highest levels of corporate management at TSMC.
Aiming not just to steal static blueprints on an iCloud account, but to harvest the tacit human expertise required to literally clone an entire industry.
And finally, we examined how the legal landscape is aggressively shifting beneath the feet of these operatives.
We saw how turning the theft of microchips into a matter of national survival and utilizing the brutal mathematical logic of game theory allows the state to tear these networks apart from the inside out.
It really hammers home that modern warfare, the true active front line of global conflict today, isn't always fought on traditional battlefields with tanks and aircraft.
No, it's fought in cloud storage accounts and auto-syncing note apps.
It is fought in the quiet, trust-building conversations at religious gatherings and community festivals.
And it's fought through seemingly mundane adjustments to legal frameworks and sentencing guidelines.
It is an invisible, continuous, and highly complex struggle for technological and psychological dominance.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought for you to take away today.
Yeah, we've spent this entire deep dive looking at how the inherent vulnerabilities of an open, free society can be exploited.
Right. Freedom of religion and assembly allowed Ding to build his network completely in the open.
Corporate trust and the necessary freedom of management access allowed Chen to walk out with the Mona Lisa in his pocket.
But these vulnerabilities are, in fact, the hallmarks of a free, dynamic, and economically successful society. They are features, not bugs.
Exactly. So here's the question you have to ponder on your own tonight. If adversaries are actively weaponizing these very freedoms,
If they're using our open cultural exchanges, our collaborative corporate structures, and our presumption of trust against us.
The natural reflexive response of any state is to tighten security, to close the loopholes.
To monitor employees' personal devices more closely, to surveil religious festivals and community gatherings, to restrict the flow of people, data, and ideas.
The instinct is always to build higher, thicker walls.
It is.
But at what point does an open society destroy the very freedoms it is desperately trying to protect just to keep its secrets safe?
That's the real question.
Are we ultimately destined to lock the Mona Lisa in a windowless underground vault where no one can ever see it or appreciate it, just to ensure it isn't stolen out of the trunk of a car? Thanks for taking the plunge with us today. Keep questioning the narrative.